You know, I never ended up actually making a video to say which game was my favorite of last year. And after thinking about it, that game was definitely Battlefield 2042. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, you looked at the video, you saw the thumbnail, it was Metroid Dread. It's a game that honestly I regret not making a video on because it was so good and I played so much of it. So I figured I'd actually, get around to making a video on it finally, since it was my favorite game of last year. For those who didn't know, the last time that we had a mainline Metroid 2D game was Metroid Fusion back in 2002. So nearly 20 years later, we ended up getting Metroid Dread. And it was absolutely worth the wait. Granted, I already did love these games, so that made it pretty easy to get me sold on it. But overall, this is the best-selling Metroid game of all time now. And for good reason, it deserves it. This is an incredibly tight and focused game that just gets straight to the point. I mean, I've beat this game several times now, I think 5 or 6 times. My quickest run through is 3.5 hours. So you can technically beat the entire game in one extended sitting. And while some people might have a problem with that, I love it. It seems fun to be able to just have like a weekend where you decide, I'm going to beat my best time, and you can go back through and beat it again. I believe my first playthrough took around 8 to 10 hours. I want to say it was closer to 8. I can't remember for sure though. And I found it incredibly fun. I wasn't trying to especially get through the game as fast as possible. It just kind of ended up that way. And honestly, I was going whatever direction I was compelled to go. The game does do a great job of trying to lure you back in though. At least in my opinion. I did hear some complaints of other people that played this game to know exactly where they were supposed to go. But honestly, for me, I didn't really have that much of a problem with it. It felt like whenever you have a teleporter or an elevator in front of you, you should take it at that moment and try to figure out where the game was trying to put you. And again, I was still deviating from time to time to be able to go and get collectibles or explore different routes and stuff like that. And honestly, on subsequent playthroughs, maybe I did get a little bit lost, but on my first playthrough, when I was just following my gut and going the direction I felt like I was supposed to go, I didn't end up getting lost or have to look anything up. Honestly, I do feel like that is something that I could see people getting frustrated with and might be a deal breaker for them. But for me, I personally loved the fact that you can go in a lot of different directions and kind of experiment with the power-ups you got recently. But to back up a little bit here, let's go ahead and talk about the story on this one. Again, this is supposed to be a direct sequel after Metroid Fusion, which released back in 2002. And this game does directly follow up with what happened in that game. There's a cutscene at the very beginning of the game that just gives you all the information of what you need to know before you jump into this game. Honestly, the story is a lot more atmospheric, I guess, in all of these games. And there are some plot points, but again, you're packing all of that into usually something that can be consumed within 4 to 6 hours in almost any of these games. Unless, of course, you get even faster at the process, you can finish it even faster than that. So ultimately, it's not that hard to catch up on what the story's doing and how it's been evolving over the last few entries, like really quickly. And honestly, you can do it just by picking up this game as your very first Metroid game. I really don't feel like you're cheapening your experience at all. Honestly, it's hard for me to say, yeah, you should go back and play a 20-year-old plus game, and you should definitely love it and enjoy it before you play this one. It's going to have some old game jank. It's going to be a little bit harder for people to get into, and I understand it's not for everybody. I personally love Metroid Fusion because I have nostalgia for that game, and I really did enjoy it, and I do still enjoy it. But not everybody's going to, and I feel like a lot more people can enjoy Dread. I love that this game also controls and feels very fluid and good. Right from the get-go, as soon as I started to play the game and I was able to move Samus like right at the beginning, I immediately knew I was going to love this game, even just from moving side to side and shooting. It's crazy how, 20 years really does that. It makes it feel even better to control the main character. Kind of a crazy idea. But it's true though. Honestly, every upgrade you get, and even just the base movement of how Samus feels to play in this game, it feels satisfying. It feels good. The other thing that I absolutely love about this game is it does a lot of atmospheric storytelling and foreshadowing. There's a lot of times you'll actually be able to see a boss in the background that you're going to fight in maybe the next like 15 minutes or something like that. And you can see it doing something in the background or scurrying off into a corridor or something like that. And it's just cool that like you can miss that, but it's still there for you to foreshadow exactly what is going to come up soon. And I don't know, I just love that type of stuff a lot, especially with these 2D games that they put a lot in the background to make it feel more third dimensional. If that's not really how you say that, is it? 3D, we'll just go with that. Makes it feel 3D. Another mechanic I'm really glad they added, and you can kind of see where the influences came from Fusion, you're not familiar, in Fusion, you're actually being hunted down by you, essentially. You go to a planet that has a new parasite sort of species called X. It's a really creative name. And they usually latch on to something that has recently died and reanimate that corpse, essentially, with a new sentience, being that parasite. Now that happens to Samus, but she doesn't end up dying. She ends up duplicating herself, and all of your power-ups from the previous game, Metroid 3, get drained and put into this new Samus X version of yourself. And then you don't have any of those power-ups yourself, so you have to go back through the game and get all of them, but you're being hunted down by a fully kitted out Samus, which is terrifying. And you can tell they really took a lot of the inspiration of how that was something people enjoyed, and they enjoyed building themselves as well, and putting that into the enemies, the new enemies in this game. And also the director of the game was talking about how they had the inspiration of wanting to do exactly what they did in Dread by having the enemies follow you and hunt you down and stuff like that, like decades ago. But they just didn't have the tech to actually make that happen in a compelling way. And you can tell, like, when you're playing Metroid Fusion, it has scripted events of whenever SAX or Samus X shows up and tries to kill you. And in this game, it's a lot more of the enemies can react to what you're doing by hearing you move around. And if you're not familiar, they do literally hunt you in this domain that you go into. You can't damage them until you get a certain power-up that's a one-time use for that specific enemy. But if they catch you, if you don't end up parrying their attack at the exact perfect frame, then you die from one shot. So you're trying to do what you can to dance around the enemies and get out of the way and be able to get through their domain until you find the power-up that you can ultimately turn on them and kill them. And it's a really fun new dynamic experience for these games, because typically Samus is the one that's hunting down everything else. It almost feels like you're the boss and they have to fight you in all of these games. And I love that in this one, they flip that. They make it to where you're the one that's having to run away from the hunter. Again, you could argue they did the same thing with Fusion, but obviously not to the same level with the new tech they're able to bring into this. Again, it just felt refreshing for this series, and I really enjoyed that they put this in here, and I'm really happy that we got to have some new mechanics. It was really cool. It is funny to me too. This came out, this game was receiving a lot of controversy about its length and difficulty. And both of those things, in my opinion, were not really bad. I don't really feel like they were actually supposed to be criticisms. Again, like I said at the beginning of this video, this game is really tight and focused. It gives you exactly what it wants to do, and then it gets out of the way. And then it lets you decide, is this something that I want to pick back up again, or am I just done with it after my first gameplay experience? I had a couple friends that played this game, and I also heard from like podcasts I listened to and other YouTubers, a lot of people did finish this and just drop it. They might have put like 20 hours into their first playthrough, and it just wasn't for them, and they just stopped playing it. And I honestly can get that. Metroidvanias are really not for everybody. For instance, if you don't like backtracking at all, you don't like getting new abilities, coming back to an area and be like, oh, I can do this, and that little like puzzle effect I guess you get in the gameplay, then you're probably not going to like these games. If you can't get behind having to complete something in a certain sequence in a certain way to be able to get to the end, which again, I know there's sequence breaking in this game, but most people are going to play it like this, then again, this game might not be for you. But for the people this is for, it's an excellent version of what that is. Definitely my new favorite Metroidvania, period. And Metroid game, period. But ultimately, like I was saying, it doesn't try to just inflate the amount of time that you're going to be playing this game by putting in artificial filler or fluff or anything like that that didn't need to be in the game. All the boss fights, while some of them might be frustrating, feel intentional and have unique mechanics or things that you need to learn with their attack patterns to be able to proceed forward. And again, in my opinion, this game is meant to be played multiple times. It's almost like you are supposed to speedrun it. I mean, maybe not exactly speedrun, but you're supposed to find your way to make this efficient for you to get through your path of start to finish and finishing this game as soon as possible. That's why this game incentivizes you to actually speed up how fast you can clear the entire game. You get rewards for beating the game on normal mode within 4 hours and also within 6 hours. And it's the same sequence for hard mode as well. And I mean, you don't really miss out on a whole lot. Really, what you get as a reward for those things is just a cool piece of artwork for previous games or an archive little tidbit for enemies in this game. So if you don't care about that stuff, then you don't need to do it. But honestly, in my opinion, it was cool and it was worth putting in the time to actually get that because one, I already enjoyed the game, and 2, because I wanted to see all the artwork. I could have just Googled that stuff, but it was fun for me to earn it. And that really is something that I feel like you have to be drawn to really like this game. And again, it was perfect for me. I really enjoyed it. And that's really how all the 2D Metroid games have been for a long time. They have rewards for just learning the game and getting it down faster. They've always been meant to be completed multiple times. On top of that, you also have another achievement for 100%ing all of the collectibles you can get throughout the game. The best way that I found to do this was to go through and beat the game as fast as possible, try to get to the ending within the allotted time, whether that's 4 hours or 6 hours. And then after you beat the game, go back and try to get all the collectibles. There's no areas that are locked off for you that you can't go back to. And honestly, it's a lot easier to get to all those spaces because you'll have all the tools to be able to do it as fast and as easy as possible. So yes, while this game is full price, and Nintendo games never really drop below full price, besides like one day on the off chance that they give like a 15% sale, which knocks off like $5. So I do know that that is a steep price point to be able to pay $60 for this game if you know that you're not going to come back in here and keep playing it over and over again. So honestly, yeah, I don't recommend it to people that don't think it's worth that, because then all you're going to do is just prove yourself right. But honestly, if you do love these types of games, really, if you enjoy Metroidvanias at all, I'd be surprised if you don't love this game. So really do yourself a favor and pick it up if it's something that does appeal to that and you haven't got this game yet, because this game is incredible. I guess the other thing I wanted to hit on was the difficulty. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier on when I talked about how the linear path might be hard to find if you don't know the keys to finding the correct path, I guess, so to speak. That is valid. And honestly, I don't think you should feel guilty about looking up the next path if you're trying to complete the game within a certain amount of time. If not, struggle with it for a little while. And if you get stuck for too long and it's just getting frustrating, don't hold yourself up over like a pride thing or anything like that on trying to figure out where to go. I really don't think it's worth it for these games. Just look it up and figure out where you're supposed to go, because you'll waste a lot of time going all through the map and going to all these different areas, and you'll just get burnt out and frustrated. There's no shame in needing to look it up. I would say just do it. If it's ruining your experience, just do it. And I know that there's some people that have a problem with that, like having to play games, and the fact that they have to look anything up means that it's automatically a bad game in their book. I don't know. I don't really agree with this. I think that it definitely is something that I can sympathize with in certain areas. Say, for instance, on the Elden Ring video, I wanted to go into more of my complaints about saying how I think that it's not great that like to really complete almost any of the endings you actually want, say the Ronnie ending or anything like that. I'm going on a tangent about a game that this video isn't even about, but I'm going to wrap it up real quick here. I don't know how you would figure that stuff out without having to look it up for your desired ending. I can see that being the case on, say, some endings, but I don't really like the fact that it's every single ending. And it's like actually required to look it up. Again, when I played through Metroid Dread, I didn't have to look anything up, but I could see how somebody might. That might sound a little bit hypocritical, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit different when it's like, go to this specific area, use these specific emotes, drop this specific gear, use this consumable item, and then turn left 365 times until the solar eclipse occurs, and all these ridiculous steps need to happen to be able to just get the desired effect. And it's like, there's literally no way anyone would figure that out. And I find this is a little bit different with this game, where people have, case in point, in my experience, gone through the game without having to look it up. I don't know. In my opinion, the magnitude is different, and it doesn't bug me in this case, but I could see how you could call me out on not being fair, I guess, in the standpoint, if I'm going to criticize Elden Ring for a similar issue. But again, for me, it was something that did not bug me. So I figured I'd put it out there just in case it's something that is a deal breaker for you, so you could know what to look for. And maybe to start discussion, let me know down in the comments if you thought that this was a little bit too difficult to figure out exactly how it's supposed to go through and it wasn't intuitive. Maybe I just got lucky on my first time. Honestly, I really love to talk about this stuff because it's something that I understand everyone's going to have a different experience, and no one is right or wrong on that. But to wrap this up, I just wanted to say too that I really do enjoy that they let Samus be such a badass in this. She's so cool. Honestly, just watch this scene. It's like one of my favorites from the early game. It's not really much of a spoiler. I guess if you don't want to see the first boss and how it concludes, then I'll leave a timestamp on the screen right now and give you about 5 seconds to jump there. but this is something that just kind of exemplifies how cool Samus is in multiple different cutscenes in this game, and I just really wanted to show it off. So I'll leave some time right now, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. I don't know, I just love the sequencing of that scene. It's just so cool, and there's so many moments like that. And that's one of the things that just gave a little bit of extra icing on top just to make this game so great. The last boss fight is incredible. It's challenging, it's cool, it's cinematic, and it means something for the story for Samus in general. Whether I think it's really that great of storytelling or not, I don't know. It's okay, but super cool. Really glad that they put that boss fight in there and they made something to where it was at least challenging for me. I need to take some time away from it and come back. And even every time I beat the game and come back to it, I usually have to take a couple attempts to be able to get through that fight. Again, I'm not going to put any footage of it in this just because that is, of course, the biggest spoiler I can give through this entire game. But know that if you haven't played it and gotten to the last fight, you definitely should do that. It's really worth it. But that's about going to wrap this one up. So I just wanted to say thank you for watching this one all the way through. Please do the usual, leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about this game, and if you think that it's your top favorite Metroidvania or Metroid game in general. Leave a like while you're there, and then subscribe. If you'd like to see me play any games live, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. I'll leave a link in the description. And I will see you all in the next one.